Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Gene Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at geneborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Gene Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Gene Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything energy and mindset to help you better your business. And I have a special guest with me here today to help us learn more about productivity. But before we get to that, I want to remind everyone there's a free gift for you down below in the show notes, geneborder.com/vow. It's just a PDF to talk you through some energy protocols, some tapping, emotional freedom technique, EFT, whatever you call it, some tapping protocols on money, beliefs we have about money, fears we have about money, so that before you make any large financial decisions, you get your body in a state of calmness so that you can make the best decision for you at the time, as opposed to reacting or taking a fear-based decision. geneborder.com/vow or click the link below. And now I have a special guest, and we're going to talk all about productivity and systems and priorities. This is Lauren Glynn. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got here in your business, where you started and how you ended up in the productivity world.
Yeah, so I'm a productivity and systems consultant coach, kind of straddle the line there depending on what my clients need. And I help people, entrepreneurs specifically, who are just overwhelmed. They know they have all the things to do, but they don't know which things they should be doing. You know, they get up in the morning and they look at their desk and their computer. They have sticky notes scattered everywhere, maybe a bunch of different lists they're working from, and they just don't know what they should be spending their time on. So that's what I help them figure out, what the priorities should be in their business, and then how do you structure your time to actually achieve those priorities and achieve those goals so that you can be successful and you can enjoy the business that you're running and you're not just stuck in that hamster wheel of doing the tasks and not actually moving forward. So that's what I help all of my entrepreneurs with.
So should I be honest up front and say I love sticky notes, and I have them in every color and every size, and I love lists, and I have different lists for different things, and they make me happy? Should I say that?
You can. And, you know, what I actually do with my clients is I figure out what works for you, and then we systematize it. So if you love sticky notes and you love having multiple lists, that's fine. We'll figure out a way that works for you to continue doing that if that's what you need. So it is a safe space here. You could admit that you love I love sticky notes too. I have some right here. You know, we're not an anti-sticky note group. It's just, how do we make it work within the full system?
I even have notes on my phone, and I have different names for different things. I have a grocery note. I have a to-do today note. I have a to-do for this event note. So I've got all kinds of notes, but that way I can put it on there and not have to remember it or to remember it, right? It's just there. It's done. I can go back to it when I'm working on that thing.
Yeah, you free up that brain space. You're not thinking about it. You're not like, oh, I have to remember to do that thing. By writing it down somewhere on your list, then you can stop thinking about it until it's time to actually work on it and actually think about it. So yes, that is a great start to a system.
Okay, so another thing that, and I'm probably jumping way ahead here, But at some point, when you have a whole bunch of different lists and a whole bunch of different notes, you have to figure, and this is going to go back to your word systems, you have to figure out how to organize all that stuff so you don't lose a note and don't even realize you've lost a note that had all those things on it that should have been done. And, oh, that's tomorrow. Where's my stuff? Oh, I didn't do that.
Yeah, and that's what I help my clients figure out is, okay, so this is my preferred way of thinking. So how do I put that into a system so that I don't lose the information and I know where it's organized? I have a client who still loves her sticky notes, but what she started doing now is taking pictures of her sticky notes, sending them to her assistant, and she's putting those notes into the project management tool for her. So it's all about working, because everybody's brain works differently, right? Like I use a very specific project management tool, Notion. It's not officially a project management tool, but I use it as a project management tool. And it's geared towards a very specific sort of brain form. Like it's you have to want to use Notion in order to use Notion because it's so customizable, but that can be really overwhelming for people. And so for my clients, usually that's not the right step for them. They need a more traditional project management tool like Asana or Monday.com. And so I work with them to figure out, how does your brain work? What makes sense for you and how you think? And then we figure out together what the right tool and system is for you. With Yvette, the woman who likes her sticky notes, we tried 4 different project management tools before we settled on the one that she ended up with, Asana, because that was just the way her brain worked. She liked the way it was laid out, it displayed information, but we had to try a few different ones to find that out together.
And I don't know if I should admit this, but I love Excel. It's so very basic, but it will do so much. And I can put a date in there, and that date will stay there until I tell it to change. And I can put a formula so that it will create. I have a federal government background. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of suspenses and timelines and due dates. And so in Excel, it's very easy for me to go back on my previous training and create due dates and suspense dates and timelines and that kind of stuff. So rather than, I've tried so many, I like your one client, I don't appreciate all the tools that are available within those CRMs. So I just don't. The project management tools, I don't need what they want to force me to use. Excel, I can tailor it to my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Here I've got, because I have rental property and certain things have to be submitted at certain times of the year. Well, I'm not going to remember what's due in January unless I have it on a spreadsheet somewhere and I could go, okay, this month is this and this month is that, right? And we're all different.
Yep. But I would also add that I worked in the federal government too, so I understand being, living in spreadsheets. But I would also add that a lot of those tools that we just mentioned can do those same things and better than Excel. But you don't necessarily know that unless someone is there showing you like, oh, this is what it looks like in here as opposed to what you would expect it to look like in Excel. And something like ClickUp actually has a spreadsheet view. So if you want to look at things in a spreadsheet, then you can. And it can do formulas and it can do due dates and you can create suspense states if you want to. But then it gives you things like reminders and it gives you things like automations and templates. So it takes that experience that you have of using Excel and that skill that you've learned of how to build things in Excel and then just builds on it for you and with you. But it can be really intimidating to sit down and try to figure out how that works. And what screen is this? And I can't find the thing that I was working on. And, it can be really overwhelming. And there's all these tutorial videos, but I don't know which ones are right for me. So that's exactly what I sit down with my clients and help them figure out is, okay, this is how your brain is working. Let's look at this particular view of this particular slice of data. Okay, does that make sense? No? Okay, well, we'll look at it this other way. Sitting down and actually taking the time to go through it, understand what the features are, understand sort of the improvements, beyond just using an Excel spreadsheet can really make that difference in how well you use the tool and how effective the tool is for you. Because if you're not comfortable with it and you're sitting down and thinking, oh, I just don't want to break anything, this looks really hard, it's going to be really overwhelming, there's that mindset of, oh, this is going to be hard. So you're making it hard, making it difficult for yourself. So it's partially, feeling comfortable and it's partially the mindset of I'm just discovering something new. I just want to learn, I just want to see. I'm just experimenting to see if this tool is the right fit. So it's a lot of different things working together.
You just said a magic word, which is mindset, which is also almost synonymous with psychology, right? I am so tired of learning new things that are obsolete because tech moves so fast now, right? So you learn new software and there's an upgrade. And now all of the stuff you learned, you got to learn the new stuff. It's like, give me a break. Just give me a very basic flat spreadsheet. I decide when to update it. I decide when to do this. I decide. So part of it is almost like a control issue, right? And I will admit, I'm big on control.
Yes, but I think that what people need to start to understand are the benefits of the upgrades that it offers. And I get frustrated too. When they change the tool, they move the button around, they change how it functions, and it does something I don't expect it to. Even as a technology person, I get very frustrated. So I think that tools, the good ones anyway, try to avoid those big changes and try to make small incremental changes instead, so that you can adjust to this one little thing and you can adjust to this one other little thing, or you can set it up in a way that makes sense for you and not have to use these new features that they have included. So I think that having that mindset of, oh, this is an improvement, let me see how I can use it, as opposed to, oh God, they changed something again and now I have to figure it out again.
Exactly.
Can really help you be more open to when things are updated and when new features are added, so that you're not feeling that overwhelm about it instead.
Yeah, it's an irritation and a frustration. And seriously, you had to do this now? And I know that's just a mindset thing. And if I switch the language that I use and change my physiology and embrace it, it would be so much better. But sometimes I just don't want to.
Yep. And I understand.
So let's go backwards now. Let's talk about how you got into this. Why in the world would you go into specializing in productivity and systemizing stuff?
So I got my degree in lighting design for theater, which
goodness, that's all about productivity.
Well, and people are always very surprised about that, because I don't do anything like that now. But I quickly realized that I don't like the brown nosing required in theater, and I didn't like the hours or the money. So I was like, maybe theater is not for me. Fast forward, I ended up being an administrative assistant at an Apple store. And I had over 300 employees. I was an HR admin. And they wanted me to print out Excel spreadsheets, staple them to the personnel folders, and write down any attendance issues for 300 employees. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't sound fun to me. So I actually taught myself, it was FileMaker. It was a database program on a Mac. Taught myself FileMaker, created an automated attendance system, and built out automations for tracking attendance, writing the attendance warnings, letting the managers know when people were getting close to attendance issues. And Apple Corporate got wind of that and was like, hey, we want you to come to Austin. I was living in Boston at the time. We want you to come to Austin and help us build out our actual automated attendance system, because you're the only one who understands the policy, even though we wrote it. But you're the one actually coding it and enforcing it. So we want you to come and be a business analyst and help us actually build out this program. So I moved to Austin. I helped build out the program. And then when I moved on from that, I moved on to a Scrum Master role, which is like a team coach. It started in software development, but basically helping the team work better together, helping them figure out their processes. What is the project management sort of style that we're looking at? How do we become more transparent to each other and to the leadership team? So that's what the Scrum Master role was doing, and then moved from there into an Agile coach role, which is sort of the same thing, but over a bunch of teams. So you're helping all the different teams sort of figure out, how do they want to work together? How do they want to organize their work? What processes are we going to use? How are we making that work transparent and visible to everyone else in the organization? And I did that for Whole Foods. I did that for Pfizer. And I did that for the federal government. I actually worked as an Agile coach at the Veterans Administration and as an executive Agile coach at the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. So I've had both private and public experience trying to improve processes. And let me tell you, process improvement in the federal government was quite an experience, as
a challenge. I'm sure.
Imagine, yes.
If you got anything changed, I applaud you greatly.
We did. we were able to make some changes. So it was good.
Very slow-moving machine because they want to make sure everything is right before they implement any change at all.
Yes. And there were a lot of people that have been doing the job the same way for a long time and were very resistant to change. And so we really had to sell it to them like, we just want to try it as an experiment. We want to see if it's any better, give it that good old college try. And then we'll go back to the other way if this way isn't better. Understand that it's an experiment and you're just sort of testing things to see how it works. And then I ended up moving to Italy to get my citizenship because I was eligible for citizenship through Ancestry. And surprise, surprise, you cannot work for the federal government overseas. They don't like that. Even though I was already remote, they did not want me working for them from another country. So I started my own business. And first I was doing agile and leadership coaching, and then realized as I was going through that, like, this isn't what I love to do. I really love technology and I love systems and I love helping people figure out better ways of working, because that was really what I had been doing in my coaching roles. It was through technology and it was through, leadership coaching, but really it was about the process and it was about the organization. It was about the prioritization. So now that's what I help small business owners do, is organize all of their projects that they're working on, prioritize them, understand what their bigger business vision is so that they can prioritize their work. So that's how the very long-winded way of saying that's how I got into what I'm doing today.
Okay, so totally off topic, but you brought it up, so I have to go there. Where in Italy? I lived in Italy for almost 5 years.
So I was in a town about an hour outside of Venice called Bassano del Grappa.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. I was down south in Naples, south of Rome.
Oh, a much different area than northern Italy. Like a whole different country.
Exactly. Well, it's a different language too. Neapolitan is a different language than Italian. So the language issue and the speaking with the hands. Yeah, hilarious. When first time I went to negotiation table across from the Italian workers, I sat on my hands. I didn't want to offend anybody. I didn't know what I didn't
emotions were. Yeah.
So I kept my hands down and quiet, so no one could say I insulted them or whatever without meaning to. But still,
that's good caution.
Not knowing it's not a defense. Okay, so talk to me about the 3 steps you take people through when they come to you.
Yeah, so the first step we do is define their vision and goals for both their life and their business. Because if you don't know where you want to go, and I think you talk a lot about this as well, if you don't know where you want to end up, then it's really hard to know how to get there. So the first thing we do is figure out, what do you want your business to look like? Do you just want to work 20 hours a week? Do you want to be bringing on bigger clients? Do you want to be bringing on just more clients? Do you want to evolve the type of services that you're offering? What do you want it to look like within your business and how you interact with your business? Do you want to be an owner that's overseeing a team? Do you want to just be a solopreneur? Do you want to, what does that actually look like for you? What do you want it to look like? And it doesn't have to be super crystal clear, because things are going to change as we learn more, but you should have an idea of kind of where you want to go. And then also, how does that interact with your life? Are you a digital nomad where you're traveling and, just working a couple hours a week? Are you, settled down with your family? Do you want to maybe move to a different area? Do you want to live out in the country? What does that look like for you? And then we work backwards. We figure out, okay, so if this is the goal, what's the thing right before that we have to do to reach that goal? And then we keep working backwards to sort of build that plan to actually achieve that vision, achieve those goals that we want to, so that when we're making decisions in our business, we can very easily say, this decision is moving me closer towards my goal, or this decision is moving me away from my goal. Because then it makes decisions really easy, because you can see clearly which path it's going to take you down. So that's the first step that we do together, is figure out, what does that bigger vision, those bigger goals look like in our business?
That sounds really easy, but in my experience, that's really hard. All the technical strategic stuff is actually, in my experience, not as tension creating, if I can say that. Because a lot of people don't know exactly what they want. They know they want to make money. They know they want more time. They want work-life balance, some people. But they don't know exactly what they want that to look like. When you,
what that even means.
How many hours a week do you want to work? Well,
Yeah.
There's this blank, and they have to think about that. And that takes some internal strategy, I'm going to say, because you've got to figure out, how much time do I want to spend with family? How much time do I want to spend on the computer? How much time do I want to spend learning new things, new software, new whatever? So what do I want my business to look like, other than just I wanted to make money?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, for each person, it's different how difficult it is, depending on if they thought of it before. A lot of people haven't, because a lot of people have bought into the capitalist idea of, I have to work 40 hours a week no matter what, and I have to be making all this money. I have to make as much money as I can. And that's just not true. Like, do you have to be constantly making more and more money, or do you just need to make enough to make yourself comfortable, and you and your family comfortable, and have a comfortable life? Do you just have to work enough hours to then make that happen? And I think we've been so taught that work is life that it's really hard for people to then take a step back and say, well, without work, what do I have? Who am I? Especially small business owners, because we feel like our businesses are our whole identity. And so if you say to them, all right, say that you're making enough money that you can step back from your business, someone else is running it for you. What does that look like for you? Do you want to start being on boards of other companies and help them get better? Do you want to become a venture capitalist and help smaller businesses grow? Like, what is that? Or, an angel investor? What does that look like for you? And people, like you said, get so scared of that because our identities are so wrapped up in this, like, I have to be successful and I have to make more money. And it can take some really deep work with them to kind of work through that and say, all right, but what do you really want? Is that if you really want that, then that's fine. But you have a choice. It doesn't have to be that way if that's not what you want.
It also brings up safety and security issues, like how much is enough? How much money do you need to feel secure? Because whether you like it or not, a lot of our safety and security can be wrapped around how much money we've got available, right?
Yeah.
Do we just need enough to pay the bills, or do we need enough to pay the bills and buy a new car? Or pay the bills and pay off doctor bills and buy a new car? Or do all that plus take a vacation once a year or 4 times a year? Or what is enough money? And that's hard to define, and it's so different for every person.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I say, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. For my purposes, I just want them to have a vision, a general idea of what they're going for and what they want, so that we can then work backwards from it. For the work that I'm doing with them, I just need them to have an idea of it. We don't have to put hard numbers on there. We don't have to put a specific timeline on there. We just kind of want to know where we're headed, so that then we can take that step back and figure out, okay, how am I going to get there? Which makes it, I think, a little less intimidating for people also.
Yeah, and the other part to that is it is going to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So having a starting point, that's another thing. Just because that is a decision for today doesn't mean that's the only decision ever.
Yeah.
It's correct for today, but you can always make a course correction as you become more clear on your vision, right?
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that I work really closely with my clients on, is understanding, like, we're making the best decision based on the information we have today about anything, not just even this bigger vision, but like the projects I'm working on and the people I'm working with. Based on the information I have right now, I'm making the best decision I can. But I also have to accept that it's probably going to change as I get more information, as things evolve, as the world changes. I'm going to have to probably change my decision. I'm going to have to change my mind. I'm going to have to alter where it is that I'm headed, whatever the case may be. And that can be really hard for people to accept too. And that's really the basic tenets of agile as a project management methodology, is that we're doing the best we can with the information we have at this moment, but we understand things are going to change. And humans hate change. We do not like it. So understanding and accepting it in the beginning can help make the whole process a lot easier. So that's a lot of sort of the mindset that I help my business owners work through.
You've used a term several times, so I want you to clarify it. Agile.
Mm-hmm. So agile is a project management methodology, is kind of the wrong word, but everyone calls it a methodology, where it's focused more on the process and less on planning. And what I mean by that is, like I said before, based on the information we have right now, we're making the best decisions we can. But we understand that we're going to get more information, and so things are going to change. And in Agile is usually compared to waterfall, where waterfall project planning, you are planning every single step right from the beginning. You're saying, okay, on this day, I'm going to do this. And on this day, we're going to have this milestone. And this day, this is going to happen. But the reality is that once you start getting down that path, all those other things are going to change. You may not still need that milestone. You may not meet that date. You may meet the date earlier. You may have a change in personnel on your project that changes the whole thing. You may change where the project is going because you realize that people don't really need that feature you're working on. They actually want this other feature. So Agile is built more around realizing that things are going to change, having a goal in mind. You definitely know where you want to go, but understanding that things are probably going to change and you're just going to adjust as things happen, as you get more information. So it's a mindset, but it's also kind of a process. And there's a bunch of different methodologies within Agile. There's Scrum, there's Kanban. We don't have to go into any of that. That sort of helps create more process around it. But the general idea is we are going to literally be agile and understand that we're going to shift as things shift and not stick to a plan. The federal government is notorious for this. I have had several stories from friends in the federal government where they're like, well, we were working on this project and we learned halfway through that it was going to be obsolete by the time we finished it, but they had already allocated the money for it and they wouldn't let us stop the project, even though we knew that it was going to not be used by the time we were done with it. That is waterfall planning. That is sticking to the plan no matter what, rather than halfway through learning, oh, nobody's going to use this piece of software that we're creating. Let's, adjust and do a different piece of software or cancel the project altogether. We're just going to keep going full steam ahead like nothing's happening. That's the difference between Agile and more traditional waterfall project planning. And then, so that's the approach that I teach my business owners, not so much necessarily project planning, but just in life. Understanding that you cannot plan every minute and every project and every milestone, and that you are going to have to adjust as you learn things, as things change. And so how do we develop those mindsets, those habits, those practices to make that adjustment easier and make it not so intimidating and overwhelming for you when it does happen?
Okay, so I have an idea of what I want my business to look like. What's the next step?
So once we know kind of where you want to go, then we start looking at, okay, kind of the bigger picture plan, which we already talked about, of, okay, what are working backwards, what are the things we have to accomplish to get there? And that's where we figure out, all right, I want to create a new service. I want to change my whole model of my business. I want to start providing physical products. So we work backwards to create a very loose plan to get us there. And then we figure out, okay, what's the next step? What's the next thing that we have to do in order to accomplish this? What's the low-hanging fruit? What's the thing that's going to move us forward, that's actually going to move us towards our goal? So that we can create a short-term plan around how we're going to be spending our time. And these are like near-term goals, like 2 to 3 months of what do I want to accomplish the next 2 to 3 months? It's going to move me closer to my vision. I really love the book called The 12-Week Year. That is all about short-term planning as opposed to annual planning and short-term goal setting and figuring out how do I achieve these goals in a shorter period of time. So that's a lot of sort of the basis of what I work with my entrepreneurs is how do we create that, or how do we decide what that next, small to medium term goal is, and then we break it down further. And we don't break it down any further than that. So if we say the next, if I want to add a different product line to my business and the next, milestone step for that is to figure out what that product is, then we sit down and say, okay, in the next 2 to 3 months, what are the things I have to do in order to decide on what that product is? And then we look at the habits that we have to create, because I'm very much about habits as part of planning. And so rather than just looking at your to-do list and just saying, okay, well, I have to do some research on these products. I have to do, interviews with people. I have to figure out what all the different options are. We sit down and we think, okay, there's the list of things, but what habits can we also include to start making that? So maybe we want to make it a habit to start doing regular market research calls in general, because we want to understand our business. We want to understand our customers. So we say, okay, I'm going to make it a habit to do 2 market research calls a week, or whatever makes sense for that business owner. And And so it's part of the to-do list, yes, but we're also making it a habit so that it's not something that we're just doing for a limited period of time, because it's going to have, additional benefits of making sure that we're doing it over and over again. So understanding the bigger vision, then breaking it down into sort of bigger chunks, smaller chunks, not bigger chunks, smaller chunks, and then figuring out, okay, what's that next near-term, sort of short-term-ish goal that we're working towards, and then breaking that down into sort of a checklist, and then also the habits that we want to start creating in our business to make that actually happen. That's step 2, which was very long-winded, but hopefully that was step 2.
Wow. So very logical.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps to have someone help you through that.
Yes, because it seems like a lot, right? It seems like you're like, I want to do all these things and I have this big vision. And so having someone that can be a neutral third party that has no investment, no emotional attachment to your business, and no, I'm working with a nutritionist right now who has grown her business to the point where she has 10 other nutritionists working for her. And she wants to start a membership in her business, but she doesn't want to stop working with clients, but she's butting up against the fact that she only has so many hours in the week. And so I, as a neutral third party, can look at her calendar and say, you have to stop working with clients, or you at least have to take on fewer clients. If you want to get to X, then you have to do Z. And people know that, but hearing it from someone else makes such a difference, because you're like, I know, but I haven't done it yet, but I know.
That is, we hear that all the time. If you will hit a money plateau if you only work with one-on-one. If you don't have groups, if you don't have memberships, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. But on the other hand, those of us who love working one-on-one, that's really a barrier, because emotions come into play on so many of our decisions in the small business world. Well, in any business decision, really. But it's very hard to give up the personal satisfaction you get from working on one-on-one with a client, knowing you're making an impact on that person's world. And with a group, it's not as intimate, right?
Yep.
So you have to be able to step back and say, look how many people I can reach, just like with a podcast, look how many people I can reach, as opposed to just having this conversation with one of my clients.
Yes, and that's the exact conversation we're having. The reason she wanted a membership is she wanted to help more people. And I said, that's great, but you can't help more people if you keep helping these people one-on-one. That's just the reality. There's only so many hours in the day. You want more time for your family. You want more time, in the evenings and weekends. You're going to have to give something up. And so me, like I said, as a neutral third party, can come in and say that to her, and she knows it. But, having someone to talk that through, and someone who understands the intimacy of one-on-one and understands sort of the difficulties of taking that next, because it's also intimidating, right? Because it's moving her into that CEO role. Instead of being the one-on-one person, now she's the person managing all the one-on-one people. And that is a totally different mindset. That's a totally different, day-to-day in your business. And I told her, I said, you have to make that decision, because you could build a really solid business on just doing one-on-one every day, all week. It will reach a plateau, like you said, but it would give you a really comfortable income and you could be helping a lot of people. And she's like, yeah, but I really want to help more. And I was like, this is the decision you're going to have to make. This is the choice that you have to make of where you want to spend your time for the best potential outcome for the largest amount of people.
The very important word you said in there that can be so difficult to get to is making the actual decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking action that will reinforce that decision, as opposed to, well, I can do this and that. Well, let's work on the decision. What decision are you making right now? It's not a forever decision. You can change it if you decide that this is not going to fit your needs, or it doesn't satisfy you, or whatever it is. But for right now, make a decision and we'll make plans based on that decision. Then you can try that path. If you love it, great. If you hate it, that's great too. But at least now you know.
We learned something.
but it's so much, what's the word, more comfortable to stay in indecision.
Yep.
Because you know that world.
Yeah. And I actually recently did a podcast episode on how do you overcome the decision paralysis in your business. And one of the things I said, I quoted a Stephen Sondheim quote, was to make a decision, what's the quote exactly? Not deciding is still making a decision. So even if you think you're still in limbo, you have decided not to decide, and that is still a decision. So people think that they're trying to skirt around it, but they're really not.
So talk to me about your podcast. I know it's off topic again, but what's your podcast called?
Yeah, so it's called Process to Profit, and it is all about processes behind successful service-based businesses or online businesses really of any kind. So if you have digital products, if you serve clients, if you're a coach, whatever. It can also help, brick and mortar businesses for their online presence as well. And I do interviews and I do solo podcasts where I talk through all the different system-y things. I had a recent episode on the difference between systems and software, because a lot of people want to say software is a system. It is not. It's part of the system. I'm actually doing a whole series on how to figure out if you need a virtual assistant in your business. And then if you do decide to hire one, where do you find them? How do you actually hire them? How do you delegate to them? How do you onboard to them? So there's a whole 6-episode series, actually 7, because I think I'm going to add an interview to that as well, that I just released recently that talks all about that. So we talk all about different, and then I bring in experts to talk through different aspects of business. I've had a podcast manager on, actually. She was one of my first guests on that we talked about podcasting for your business and how beneficial it can be. I've had marketing experts on there talk all about the processes behind marketing in your business. So all different process topics and ideas.
Cool. Okay, so let's go back to your process. Talk about the first 2 steps. There's a third step, right?
Yep. So the third step is going to be to actually take the time to look at your calendar. And so I sit down with my clients and I say, okay, here's your big picture projects. For example, that nutritionist I talked about is building a membership. She's also doing a couple of different presentations for different groups. She's doing study participation for different groups. She's doing, research, but then also working with patients for that study. And so she's a lot of irons in the fire. And so we sit down and we are like, all right, these are the goals you want to accomplish. Do these projects move you towards your goal or not? And then if they still do, then we break them down into manageable tasks, 1 to 2 hours at the most, and figure out, okay, where are we going to put these tasks in your calendar to make sure that they actually happen? And so it's kind of time blocking, but also task batching at the same time. We're kind of hybriding it. And again, it depends on the person if this is how their brain works. But this particular client runs on her calendar, so we put it in her calendar. And the reason that we do that is because I want my clients to, exactly like you said, make a decision. It's not so much about we're planning every minute of every day, but I want my clients to look at my calendar and say, or look at their calendar. If they're looking at my calendar, they're looking at their own calendar and say, okay, I originally decided that I was going to spend this next 2 hours creating slides for this presentation that I have to do. This other thing came up that I kind of want to work on more, but I want them to have that conversation themselves. Okay, I'm deciding that this other thing is more important than these slides that I have already committed to. And then I make them move the time block. Okay, if you're not going to work on it right now and this other thing takes precedence, that's fine. But you have to move the time block to another time so that you're not losing, because you already said you have to spend time doing this. So when is that time going to be? And so we actually physically move the block in the calendar to show, okay, I'm moving this time, I'm making the decision that it's happening at a different time and it's less important than the thing that I'm actually working on. And by working with my clients to help them figure out how they're actually spending, and again, it's not about, auditing your time or tracking minutes, like you're not, punching a time clock or anything. It's more about what decisions am I making in the moment about how I want to spend my time that are impacting the bigger goals in my business. Because so many people at the end of the day are like, I feel like I didn't really accomplish anything. I don't know what I spent all my time on. And you go back and you look at your calendar and you're like, well, I didn't do, I had meetings. But if your tasks aren't in there, then it's a lot easier to not realize what you've spent your time on, or you kind of shuffle your time around. So I'm a really big fan at breaking down your projects, committing time to them in your calendar, and then time blocking out even further, depending again on how their brain works. Some people don't like time blocking. Some people do. With this particular client, we are blocking out time because she is so busy. She spends an hour on email twice a week. She has meetings with her assistant. She has other things on there. So we have to really block out the time because otherwise she won't have enough time. And she's not making the decision about how she actually wants to spend her time and what her priorities are. And so you could evolve this to say, once we've been working together for a long time, maybe you don't have to put every single thing on the calendar, but at least at the beginning of having a picture of what your priorities are for that day, and then sort of working backwards from it and saying, okay, I said this was a priority before. Is it still a priority now that I'm at the moment and I have to actually work on it? Or did something else come up that I actually need to spend my time on and I need to move this over? If I move it over, what else am I changing? Because my calendar's already pretty packed. So it's, like I said, making them make those decisions and think through how they're actually spending their time is that sort of third and final is the wrong word, but, third step of getting themselves sort of productive and organized.
I don't know if you know who Brendan Burchard is, but he's a very well-known coach. And when he goes into a business to help the business person evaluate what's going on, the first thing he does is says, show me your calendar. Because if you prioritize something, it's on the calendar. And if you don't really prioritize it, you're not going to schedule it in. So he can look at that and see where your priorities are.
Yep.
Where your values have come into play. Is it really on making money, or is it on the tennis game with the buddies, or is it the golf game? Where is your focus? And focus leads to an action plan, hopefully. If you have no focus, no awareness, there is no strategic action plan, so there is no
even goal. Yeah.
So I really like he's got a daily, weekly, like a journal thing, where you determine what is the one thing I want to accomplish today. So he has you look at big picture. You've got the hours and you can fill in all your real schedule, but it's high level focus. What is your goal? What is your priority for today? What do you want to feel today at the end of the day to let you know I've done it? I've made a step forward, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that some of us, and we're all different, but I can look back on the week and think I've done nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then I look at my calendar, it's like, oh my gosh.
Actually, I did all the things.
Yeah. But if there's any downtime, we talk. Our reality is what we think, right? It's not the outside world. It's the story we tell ourselves inside our head, that whole mindset, psychology thing, whatever it is. But what we believe to be true is true for us. And so when I think I've got nothing done this week, but then I look at my calendar, it's like, oh, right, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did, look what all I did. But if I didn't actually take the time to focus on what did I accomplish this week? Did I make a difference somewhere? Then I live inside that story. I got nothing done. I'm a terrible person. And it just spirals down, right?
Yeah.
So having something concrete to look at, that calendar, that journal, whatever it is, can sometimes stop the spiral and say, oh, I guess I'm okay after all.
Yeah. And one of the things my business coach taught me too is, gratitude journaling. So sit down at the end of the day and just write down 3 good things that happened today. I also like to write down 1 new thing I learned and 1 challenge I faced. And that's a really good exercise. And it takes, a couple minutes. It's a really good exercise of reframing your day and helping you realize, no, actually, I did get some things done that I wanted to get done. You can look, and I often look back at my calendar and say, like, when I'm trying to remember what it was that what the good things are, I look back at my calendar. I'm like, well, where did I actually spend my time? And that makes it a lot easier. So by having it sort of documented, it's a lot easier to then appreciate it.
And I'm weird with calendars. I have different calendars for different things also. I have my because, I have clients and I do podcast recordings and all that kind of stuff. So I have the calendar that everybody can access to see where I am during the week and when I'm available if they need to chat with me or whatever. But then I also have it's an Excel spreadsheet, okay? But it's one that I can print. And because I like to write.
Writing. Yep.
And I like colors. You can see this is a colored pen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy actually putting down on paper what I think is important for a specific time slot. So yes, I have the computerized calendar that's all got all the stuff. But on my calendar that's on a clipboard that has sticky notes that was originally in an Excel spreadsheet, I can just glance at it and understand what my whole week is just on that page, And
that's how your brain works. My like I said, my nutritionist client, she does the same thing. She'll actually print out her daily schedule in the morning and then write on it, oh, I actually did this during this time. Sometimes she might update the electronic one. And, that works for her and that works for you. And you have a system and she has a system. And that's the biggest thing that I want people to understand is there's no one size fits all. It's really all about how your brain works, how you think through things, and just figuring out what that system is rather than just having no system and winging it instead.
And it is so critical to understand that just because your system is different than somebody else's doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it work.
Right.
It's just different.
Yep.
Find what works and let it work for you.
Yeah. And, run experiments too. That's the other thing is I think people are afraid of change and afraid of trying new things. And I think that if you frame it in your mind as I'm experimenting with this to see if it works for me, and I'm going to experiment with it for a certain period of time, and then I'm going to evaluate if I like it or not. That's sort of the key to experiments. You can't just let them kind of linger on. It's like that's why they give you like a 7-day free trial of tools and things so that you can sit down and actually use it and put in, test data and practice with it and actually use it to see if it works for you and experiment with it. But it's time blocked or time boxed, as we call it in project management lingo. It's time boxed so that you have to finish it by a certain period and then evaluate if you want to keep going. So I think if people frame it as an experiment when they are looking at changing their routine and they are trying new things, I think that might help them get over the fear of change a little bit because they're not totally committing to it. They're not committing to change, but they are committing to trying something new and seeing if that works any better than what they're already doing. If it doesn't, you can go back to the way you were doing it before. No, it's not. I like to say it's not brain surgery because I've had brain surgery, so I can say that. It's not brain surgery. Nobody's going to die if you don't end up using this, project management tool. You'll just go back to the way you were doing it before and continue on.
But I don't want to give up Excel.
Well, that's a different conversation altogether.
Well, it's a comfort. I know what I'm. Once you get to be an expert at something, then it's just easy. Not just to learn something new.
But remember the government mantra. That's the way we've always done it. So,
oh my gosh, when I would take over a new office, that was the first thing I would give. This is off topic, but I'm gonna throw it out there. The first 30 days, I sat in the chair. I would have a conversation with all my employees. I would not change a thing. I would watch everything that went on, but I'm notes clear. I don't want to hear that. That's the way we've always done it because that's not a defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to think about it. So I'm just going to tell you, oh, that's what they told me to do. Well, that's what we've always done. That has no meaning, right? It just means you're not thinking for yourself.
Isn't that what you're doing with Excel? That's the way you've always done it.
Yeah, but I like it. Okay, I'll consider something else. How's that?
I know, like I said, all you have to do is experiment. You don't have to commit right away. You don't have to give them, you don't have to switch everything over. You just run an experiment, see how it goes.
And the way all your clients come to you, most likely, with all resistance factors that come into play.
Yep.
So if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I am most active actually on Threads lately. I'm at Lauren G Consulting on Threads, but it's the same thing on Instagram. So if you prefer Instagram, I'm there as well. And I actually have a free gift for your viewers and listeners today. It is called the 7 Days to Streamline Your Business. So if you have all of these processes in your business and you're just not sure kind of what's going on and how your business is running in the background, then this challenge can actually help you kind of map it all out, figure it out, and then figure out where you can actually streamline things within your business. So that's at laurenglynn.com/streamline. It's a 7-day email course. It's super simple and it's not overwhelming. You get one little bite-sized piece a day over 7 days so that you can figure out sort of opportunities to make your business a little bit more efficient.
And for those of you who didn't catch that, just go to the show notes below and click on the link. It'll take you right there.
Yes. And then my podcast as well. It's Process to Profit. It's available everywhere. It's also here on YouTube for those of you who are watching. So go and check that out as well.
Cool. So we're about at the end of our time together. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? I know we jumped all over the place from Italy to the federal government to whatever, but anything that comes to mind.
So I am going to speak directly to you. Don't be afraid of change. And don't be afraid to experiment with new things. Remember, it is not a marriage. It is not brain surgery. You're not committing to anything. All you're doing is giving it a try to see if it might be a better option. So don't be afraid of change. Experiment to see if there are perhaps better options out there for you. And then, move forward in your business a little bit faster.
Cool. Now, I will take it under advisement and I will try to be more open-minded and try to think past my Excel spreadsheets.
It's funny you said take it under advisement because that's something my dad would always say when he would not consider it at all. Take it under advisement.
I would try to be open-minded. I added that on because I knew.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, the whole resistance thing it's just there.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to have some friends who are really good with the technical stuff because I will play with something for hours. And then I just give up and I'm like, so can you just help me with this? Oh, sure. And, we're a minute into it and he's got it done. I'm like, really?
Yep. Well, and that's well, and that's why with my clients, I walk you through it. So I'm not doing it for you, but I'm walking you through doing it so that you can understand sort of how it's structured and how it's all set up and everything so that you're walking away with the knowledge, not just me doing it for you. So
yeah. And probably your clients aren't at the frustration point that I get myself to before I finally go to this guy and say, help me.
I try to intervene before that point, yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been fun.
I'm so glad.
You probably heard some things you hadn't expected to hear off topics, but, such as I figure whatever comes up in these conversations is what was meant to come out and hopefully somebody will benefit from it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again for having me. It was a wonderful conversation and I had a really good time.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you coming. And for the listeners out there, I want to thank you as well. The weekly podcast drop every midnight plus 1 minute every Tuesday. I'm not up at that time, but you may be.
You're not up there pressing the button till
exactly. I have a tech. It's what, like I just said, the whole tech stuff. There's some parts of it that I'm really good at, and other parts just suck the life out of me. That's why I have a team that does all podcast stuff. Mm-hmm. I do the parts I enjoy. They do the parts that, really just drag my energy level down.
I understand.
But for the listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was I had a blast. But until next time, this is your host, Jean Border, with an episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. Energy work to better your business. Hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey.